There again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our April 10th, 6:30 session of the Watsonville City Council, and welcome each and every one. Anyone needing translation services, their devices are over by our translation booth. First of all, this evening we will start out with roll call, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, please.
Bilicic.
Present.
Kaufman Gomez.
Present.
Dutra. Garcia. Hernandez.
Here.
Hurst.
Here. And thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. Please join me in with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We have a relatively short agenda, but I see that we have a number of members in the audience that may wish to address us. And so let's move forward with our informational items. They're in the packet. Anyone wishing an agenda, they are at the back of the room. There is a report of disbursements for the public to peruse. And now we will have move to item 5, oral communications, and we will start with the public. Unless does the city attorney wish to announce anything from closed session at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council considered one item. It's the agendized item on closed session this evening, but took no final action. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Let's move to oral communications from members of the public. Anyone wishing to address us, please step to the microphone. There are some blue cards that we request that you fill out, and you don't have to do it right this moment, but drop them in the basket there so that we will know and have a record of oral communications and be able to reach you if we might need to have further clarification or share any information with you. Thank you. Please go right ahead.
Did I press this? Is it on? Okay.
I believe it is.
Good evening. First, we want to thank all of the city council members for your service. My name is Lucy Bassor, and I'm a resident of Watsonville. We are here tonight to request that the city of Watsonville establish a sister city relationship with Cavtat, which is in Croatia. I'm here with Donna Mekis and Kathy Mekis-Miller. They're behind me. The authors of Blossoms into Gold, The Creations of the Pajaro Valley. This book some of you might have seen before. They will briefly explain the connection between these two cities and why we are making this request.
Good evening.
Good
my
evening.
name is Donna Mekis. I'm going to talk just very briefly about the connection between this area of Croatia and Watsonville. The city of Cavtat is the county seat of the region of Konavle in Croatia. In the years surrounding the turn of the 20th century, members of nearly every family from this region immigrated here to the Pajaro Valley. These immigrants built Watsonville's apple industry, which lasted more than 100 years, from 1870 to into the 1970s. The first immigrants from Croatia arrived in the 1870s, and by 1903 they were shipping 2,500,000 boxes of apples to locations around the world, all from Watsonville's small town of just 2,500 people. Watsonville became known as the apple capital of the world when thousands of visitors arrived in town by the trainload from all over the country in 1909 to attend the Apple Annual, modeled after San Francisco's 1894 World Fair and Exhibition. The economic outcome of this story has been famous through Jack London's description of the Slavonian apple growers of the Pajaro Valley in his 1913 novel, The Valley of the Moon. By the 1920s, Croatians made up more than 20% of Watsonville's population, and the vast majority of these Croatians were from the region of Konavle, just south of Dubrovnik, on the Adriatic coast.
My name is Kathy Mekis-Miller. And I do think that forming a sister city relationship with cities of the world is a great idea. So many peoples have come to Watsonville to expand the culture and the economy of this city. And tonight, we're asking to honor our cultural ties with Croatia. And we're asking the city staff for their guidance and for their leadership in this venture. The Slavic American Cultural Organization, SACO, and its many members are in strong support of this request. And this evening we have a small portion of our membership here in support of this request. So thank you for providing governance and counsel on how to proceed with this request. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being here and making this request. We kind of wondered when this would occur, and so we're glad to hear it sooner rather than later. As you know, I'm a big supporter of Sister City expansion, and we do have a process and a procedure that you can access through our city clerk, and we would appreciate that written request, and we will inform you of the process and procedure. We are a member of the Sister Cities International at this time, and so we're going to probably be following the Sister City of International's guidelines and what's been established over the years. So we're glad to hear this request. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Mitsuno Bauermeister. My younger daughter, Celestine Glover, known as Celly, was struck by a distracted driver last Wednesday at the intersection of Airport Boulevard and Home while she was crossing lawfully in the crosswalk. My husband Ken and my older daughter Jessica and several of Celly's dear friends are here with me tonight so that we can be Celly's voice while she's in Stanford ICU fighting for her life. We are asking for your support and action for two things. First, we're asking that you please take whatever action is necessary to install a traffic light at Airport and Home. It's my understanding there are a lot of accidents that happen there. It is a very wide intersection, the speeds are fairly high there, even in the speed limit. And it could help prevent future pedestrian tragedies. Secondly, my family and friends and I would appreciate any help to sharply increase fines and other penalties for distracted driving. Celly's condition remains critical and unstable. She is at risk of stroke due to her brain and vascular trauma. She faces major surgery later this week to piece together her shattered pelvis. But Celly is a fighter. She's an advocate for individuals with disabilities and is an individual with disabilities herself. She has gone regularly to Sacramento and met with legislators to speak up on behalf of funding and support for individuals with disabilities. She's an amazing young woman. She loves her job at McDonald's in Scotts Valley. She's an avid rider of the Santa Cruz Metro bus system, and several bus drivers, known as Celly's favorites, have reached out to show their support. Celly grew up in Pajaro Valley and San Lorenzo Valley from the age of 3 to the present. She is a deeply rooted community member here. At only age 26, Celly has her whole life ahead of her, and I hope that one day she will stand right here at a future date and thank you herself for the traffic light that I'm sure will be installed at Airport and Home. She has recently made her home, Watsonville, out of an apartment complex near that intersection, and we're...
Please continue.
Can you indulge me? Thank you. And she loves Watsonville. She's proud to work in Santa Cruz County, and just to she wants to continue her life. I know she does, and to contribute to this community. If you could indulge me for one more moment, I have a brief statement from Mike Johnston, who said he knows several of the council members, and if I may please read it. Dear members of the council, my name is Mike Johnston. I am sorry I was unable to address you in person today due to a prior commitment. I drive Airport Boulevard between Freedom and Highway 1 multiple times on most days. I have to say that the intersection of Freedom and Home is probably where I encounter the most pedestrians, as there are a lot of folks working in the Airport Industrial Park who walk to and from the 7-Eleven there. This will only get worse as the Airport Industrial Park is developed and as the Conservation Corps ramps up in the National Guard Armory there. Additionally, due to the mini market and the gas station, there is probably more vehicular cross traffic at that intersection than at any other point on Airport that does not currently have a traffic signal. What happened to Celestine Glover was a tragedy and an accident, but I sincerely believe that had there been a signal there, it would not have happened. I know that as you try to make Watsonville a safer town for pedestrians and drivers alike, you have many, many priority intersections, but I urge you to give the intersection of Airport and Home your most serious consideration for the installation of a traffic light. Thank you for your time, Mike Johnston. And so on behalf of Sally, my sweet daughter, I thank all of you for giving me your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, we're all very saddened by this tragic collision that occurred, and we're going to do whatever we can to study up on this intersection. You know, we've got a number of processes and procedures, some of them dictated by the state in regards to this, but we'll have as much study and consideration on this request as possible. Thank you very much. Our best to the family. We have the next speaker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. My name is Leticia Mendoza, Board Trustee for Cabrillo College, elected to represent many of the City of Watsonville residents. As a trustee, one of the most important roles is to hire our college president. I am here to introduce to you our new president, Dr. Matt Whitstein. He holds a BA, an MA, and a doctoral degree in political science. His career started as a professor, later as a dean on instruction and dean of planning, research, and institutional effectiveness. Also, he has been an assistant superintendent, vice president of instruction and planning. He has expertise and experience to develop and guide innovative partnership and support programs in our community. Most importantly, he has shown his interest and dedication to support all students. He has been spending much time getting to know our community and Watsonville. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Matt Whitstein. Thank you.
Let's welcome Dr. Whitstein, please. Thank you. Welcome to our City Council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council, city staff, members of the public. It's an honor for me to be here, and I kind of have to watch what I say tonight because I've got two of my bosses here in front of me, one who's the city attorney and of course, Leticia. But I'm really pleased to be here as the new president of Cabrillo. It's an honor, and I do not take it lightly. I promise to be as good a steward as I can for the college. And just to take a quick moment, I just wanted to say that I'm coming from the city of Stockton, where I worked as an assistant superintendent, vice president of instruction at San Joaquin Delta College, the community college there. But my roots are in the Midwest. I grew up in East St. Louis, Illinois, right across the river from St. Louis, and grew up in a blue-collar family, a mother who took community college classes to become a nurse. And so the mission of community colleges has always been important to me and my family, having grown up watching my mom study across the dinner table while I was 10 years old. So I will promise to work with everybody that I can in the county, and especially here in Watsonville, to make sure that we're delivering services to our students. I know the Watsonville Center is an important part of this community. It was the first place that I toured when I visited Cabrillo College on my drive over. And I'm pleased to say that we'll be expanding course offerings there. We'll be working more collaboratively with Digital Nest to make sure that students have some hands-on opportunities working there in that center and in some digital media courses that we'll be offering at the center this coming fall semester. And with that, I just want to say thank you for the welcome and the tremendous welcome I've gotten from folks like Nancy and working in adult ed issues with PV Unified. I know we'll be collaborating a lot over the years, and it's just been a tremendous welcome. I've had breakfast with Councilmember Garcia, met city staff that morning at 2nd Street Coffee, so it's a real pleasure for me to be here. I promise to work my tail off on behalf of students for you. So thank you. And I'll hand some cards around. If you ever want to get in touch with me, please do.
Thank you, Dr. Wetstein, and welcome. Our relationship with Cabrillo is essential, and so welcome to community. And I know that the council and our staff pledge support for a long and effective tenure of yours. Thank you. Could we have the next speaker, please?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and community members. I am Tammy Stolzenthaler, Environmental Education Coordinator, representing our Watsonville Earth Day, Day of the Child Committee. We are very pleased to announce that our 16th annual Watsonville Earth Day, Day of the Child Festival is coming up very soon. The festival will be held on Sunday, April 22nd, from 12 to 4 in our Watsonville City Plaza. And I know all of us have been to many festivals where our kids are begging us to buy them all the toys and candy. Well, this festival is better than that and goes beyond that. Each organization will offer a completely free and bilingual activity or educational game for the kids. And of course, each family will have access to information about valuable community services. We expect to have 9 city divisions working together with 50 local nonprofit organizations and 6 business sponsors to make this festival a reality. We invite council members and the public to join us, and we look forward to having you there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tammy. We look forward to a great day, so thank you. Anyone else in the public wish to address the council at this time? Seeing no one else wishing to address the council at this time, we will now go to our, we've already had our closed session report. Let's hear from the council members, any oral communications from the council, any information the council would like to share. Council member and former Mayor Felipe Hernandez.
Yes. You know, recently I think some speeding issues and traffic issues have been very prevalent. It's on the cover of the Sentinel here. It's on the cover of the pedestrian safety issues of the Pajaronian. And this is our California League of Cities. It's also in their issues about calming traffic and pedestrian and bike safety. It's even local here in the Corralitos Valley Reports, traffic, speed, and safety issues in Corralitos. So it's been an issue everywhere. Recently I've been walking a lot on the streets and talking to constituents, and it's a concern with a lot of people. Crosswalks are a big concern with people on East Lake, Freedom, different locations that I've been to. You know, I started a while back, we started a group, kind of a little coalition called Bike Friendly Watsonville, and it was not only to encourage an active community and have fun bike rides, but it was also it was also aimed at creating a safer bike and pedestrian environment for people here in Watsonville. And with everything that's been going on, I think at some point I want to see if the city manager of the city can have a community meeting about traffic calming and, you know, bike and pedestrian safety issues, to discuss what kind of infrastructure changes we could do, things like, the new, well, of course, traffic signals is important, but there's also other things like the new hybrid crosswalks. There's the flash beacon crosswalks that we have seen in our community, roundabouts, speed bumps in our community, bulb outs, road diets. There's a lot of things that we can do. There's median islands that we could do that provides a safe spot in the middle of the road, green bike lanes. If we can discuss all the issues with the community that we could do, I think that would be really good to let them know of all the options that we have and address the issue and find out from the community where is it that they see it dangerous. All along East Lake, I've found that people have been addressing that issue, that they told me that by Brewington, by Tuttle, by different locations all along there. So we have to address it, My line of thinking is that wide streets allow for speeding, so we have to address that issue. We could even involve all our local partners, Bike Santa Cruz County, Ecology Action, to put together some sort of community meeting to really address this issue. And for folks that want to find out more about traffic safety and bike and pedestrian safety, I suggest there's a book called The Walkable City by Jeff Speck. We read it a couple of years ago, but I really, if people want to advocate for safe streets, take a look at materials like that. It really addresses the issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hernandez. I, too, think that this would be a valuable public service to focus in on traffic safety and the constraints that the city is under, not only budget-wise, but by the state of California and the restrictions that exist and the processes and procedures that we can move forward. I know our public works are looking at this particular intersection right now and have been, and I know we'll get some, hopefully some answers very soon. Councilmember Kaufman Gomez?
Would you like Councilmember Garcia?
Oh, let's go with Councilmember Garcia, and we'll go right down the line.
Thank you. I attended many of the same events that my colleagues will address. However, I want to address two workshops or summits that I attended just myself. I attended the annual WELL Summit, which is the Water Education for Latino Leaders. The summit was in Sacramento. I was given a scholarship to attend this summit. We begin with a tour of the Sacramento Delta water system, which serves urban and agriculture agencies from San Francisco Bay to Southern California. We viewed levees, agriculture, and Delta infrastructure. We learned about the Delta risks that include subsidence, sea level rise, and seismic activity. The issue that is being debated right now is the governor has recommended a tunnel be built through the Delta to increase the quantity and quality of water delivered. Of course, this tunnel will cost millions and millions of dollars. On the second day, we had an excellent panelist that addressed issues of managing floods, investing in infrastructure, and preparation for earthquakes, fires, and subsidence. It was interesting that when I spoke about the flooding in Watsonville, two different panelists knew and had worked with Corps of Engineers on the Pajaro River. In fact, that morning, one of them said that she had an 11 o'clock phone conference with Watsonville. I came back with many questions and issues about our groundwater, our stormwater, and emergency preparedness policy. And I'm glad to report that I communicated with our Public Works Director, Steve, and he satisfactorily answered all my questions. I'm convinced that our Public Works Director and staff are doing all they can to make sure that Watsonville has clean, safe water. Last week, there was a press conference to launch the $250 million Affordable Housing Solutions Initiative, which will be hopefully on the November ballot. I was one of 3 persons asked to speak and represent Watsonville. I spoke about the importance of the bond and being able to leverage the 3 affordable housing programs we have here in Watsonville. Of course, those being the Inclusionary Ordinance, First-Time Home Buyers Program, and Down Payment Assistance Programs. So please put on your calendar April the 19th, 5:30 p.m. here in our civic community room to learn about the bond, because they're going to explain to us what the bond's about, and please give as much input as you can in terms of what this bond should look like. It will go to the Board of Supervisors because they're the ones that are being asked to put it on the November ballot. And so there's going to be a lot of community outreach to make sure that when we go to the supervisors, they are convinced that that's what the community of Santa Cruz wants. And just finally, I just want to say that I had a conversation a year ago with Matt about a youth program to address civic engagement and a paid city internship. Well, I want to announce, and it's been announced already this last week, that we're on our way to have the summer youth program beginning this summer. And it's a partnership between the city and the Pajaro Valley Unified School District. It's a 3-week program to be held July the 9th through July the 27th. And it will give classes in the morning about youth civic engagement. In the afternoon, these young people will be able to go into the many departments that we have here and have some internship, paid internship, so that they know about possible careers, that they can go away to college and come back and work here in the city. So I just want to say that if you know any youth who are juniors or seniors at Watsonville High School, Pajaro Valley High School, or Aptos High School, please encourage them to apply. And finally, I just want to give special thanks to Elizabeth Padilla, assistant to Matt, for all the work she did in making this happen. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Councilman Garcia. You're right. Water and jobs and housing, those are going to be the issues and public safety that we face. Councilmember Kaufman-Gomez.
Thank you. I hope I have enough courage, as Sully's mom had at the diocese after this evening, because this accident has had a significant impact on myself as well. Tonight I'm not going to talk to you about what's on the calendar or future events. Tonight I want to talk to you about what transpired within feet of my office last week. How unfortunate that this happens to be the third accident within the week that I've had the privy to, and the second one that's been at my doorstep. As many people may know, my business is directly in front of this intersection at Holman Airport Boulevard. Since I've been here, I've personally seen way too many accidents and near misses in this intersection. For more than a decade now, I've been an advocate to ensure we get funding to work on improving the safety of this particular intersection. My goal has always been to see this project through to completion before any serious injury or fatality were to occur in this intersection. Unfortunately, last week, there was a horrific accident where a young woman, who happens to be the same age as my daughter, was struck in this crosswalk, just feet from the curb, crossing Airport as she was on her way to the bus stop. This victim has a name. Her name is Sally. She just recently came back to Watsonville, lives in sunny, the complex just nearby here. But now, today, she is fighting for her life at Stanford Hospital in critical care condition. Her parents have left her bedside to come to our council meeting tonight to share their story with us and to let us know how she's doing. While this accident is still under investigation, it doesn't stop us from asking that we push this project through to ensure the public safety at this intersection. We need to listen and react for our public safety in our neighborhoods that have been shouting out for our help. I know that if Sally were able to join us this evening, she would want to know that the government people are here to help. If this means we need to legislate for effective local public policy, then let's do so now. If we need to fix the laws we have on the books to keep our community safe, this should be our priority now. It's also been mentioned that this is the month for distracted driving awareness. So my message to everyone today is to pay attention to your surroundings and put down your devices when you're behind the wheel. We can't begin to implement our goal of Vision Zero without everyone's help and participation. Whether you're a driver, a bicyclist, a pedestrian, we all must make a conscious effort to pay attention to the safety of our entire community. Again, we need to put your cell phones down while you're driving. It's important. Clear out the distractions so that you can focus on driving safely. As a pedestrian or cyclist, it also means that we all need to pay close attention to all of the moving parts when we go about our neighborhoods. Accidents such as this one impact all of our lives. So the next time you're out there and about, know that these accident victims are our community members. They are members of our family. They are members with names and faces. And this is the last thing you want to have happen to one of your loved ones. So please, for the sake of the public here, watch and be very careful when you're out there, and don't just be distracted driving. So again, thank you for my time here on this, and I'm really sorry for the family, and I hope that she pulls through. She's a fighter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Bilicic.
I think I'm going to start with some of the events that I attended and some of the people that were acknowledged, like the Skillicorn Barbecue and Nita Gizdich. It was a real honor for Nita, and then to have the Croatian people come and ask for a sister city, it just kind of follows through. So I hope that will all transpire relatively soon. I had, obviously, many of us attended the 150-year celebration. It was great. Except I was a little bit sick that night, but it was a nice celebration. Sir Optimus had a dinner for people that have dreams and how they could support people in achieving those dreams. I went to the Portuguese dinner, a lot of people there, a lot of cultural spirit. The Japanese had a flower festival, and there's a lot of good events, a lot of positive things happening in our community. That being said, I have to say that this accident greatly affected me too. I go down Airport Boulevard a lot, and I know that Councilmember Kaufman Gomez has talked about this particular intersection time and time and time again. And I know that we, government, we take time, and sometimes we take too much time. Green Valley Road, I work at the towers, and I see that intersection as another one that is critical. People walk across that. It's 4 lanes. Cars are going, 30, 40 miles an hour. I don't know. But it's very difficult when we have wide streets, and that's Airport Boulevard also. Eastlake Avenue, by the grocery store, Eastlake Shopping Center, there's a long crosswalk there. And I think we've talked about this. We've talked about what can we do to enhance our crosswalks. Riverside Drive was a start, but that's a state road. But I think our planning department, Public Works, is making effort. But it's just too bad we're slow. And it's not any reflection on Public Works. It's just how government works. You have to get this permit and that permit and these people to say okay and those people, and do we put a signal, do we put flashing lights, whatever. We know that we have a problem. We were on the front page of the paper, the worst, pedestrian safety. That's terrible in our community. In our community that has so many positive things going. And, who's to blame? Well, I don't know that there's a blame. I think as drivers, we just need to be very careful. As pedestrians, we need to be very careful, too. And I think sometimes people think when they're in the crosswalk, well, that car's just going to stop and I'm going to come right off that edge and they're going to stop. It's not easy. And that's no reflection on this. But, just talking in general. I think that we have a lot of work to do with our roads, our crosswalks, our public safety. Those of you who know me know that public safety is one of my number one things and has been. I think police do a great job. I think fire department, they do a great job. Public Works, you guys have stepped it up too. But somehow we have to get solutions more quickly. And I don't know how we expedite funding. I don't know how we do these things. But I just think that this has to be another priority, and it has been, but we just need to expedite things. Mike, I feel very sorry for you and your family. I can't believe how you are here tonight to share your feelings and what happened, and we wish Sally only the best. Thank you.
And I too echo those sentiments and statements. You know, public safety is very important, and there will be a 7th annual March of Solidarity tomorrow in Santa Cruz. The 7th annual March of it's called the Expand the Circle, Reach All Victims, National Crime Victims' Rights Week of 2018. That'll be tomorrow, April 11th, rain or shine, 701 Ocean Street. They will march from the courthouse to the Santa Cruz City Hall, 6 p.m. in the evening. Guest primary speakers will be District Attorney Jeff Rosell and others. So public safety is on everyone's mind in every type of manner. We did have a historic 150th birthday celebration in the city plaza. We're not done yet. We're still going to have some more activities, and you can find those on watsonville150.org. And I will invite you and look forward to seeing you. We also had a celebration here in the council at our last meeting, and we had a number of historic and dignitary mayors and council members present. Let me list some of them. Dennis Osmer, Tony Campos, Betty Bobita, who was here this evening, Ramon Gomez, Judy Doring-Nielsen, Ana Ventura Ferez, Manuel Bersamin, Antonio Rivas, Kimberly Peterson, Greg Caput, Edward Din, Luis Alejo, Eduardo Montesino, Daniel Dodge, and we also had our former city manager, Carlos Palacios, and our assistant city manager, Marcela Travantes, in addition to our legendary city clerk, Lorraine Washington, all in attendance here. It was a historic evening, and so I encourage you to review the tapes if you weren't here, and hopefully you saw the write-up in the news press as well. We're on to great things in this community. We have many struggles that we need to work together on, and so we look forward to the cooperation and participation of the public, the council, and our staff in solving these many problems. Mr. City Manager, do you have some words for us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mayor, City Council, I would like to say this, that a number of us work in the public sector and especially at local government because we could make changes today that at any other level of government you see in a year or 10 years. And, you know, having said that, you know, having tragedy such as this is not, can be avoided if we can avoid it. We met with Public Works today. They're going to start trying to expedite the crosswalks there in the next month or so to make sure there's flashing lights there. Until additional funding is going to happen, we're going to make sure they're going to do the RFP to the state in May and get the funding, and by July we're going to start doing that intersection. But we're going to start working, Public Works, and start working immediately on the crosswalks and the lights fairly quick. So apologize to you all, and it's not a, apologize. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much. City Attorney, do you have anything to add to this for our deliberations here?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I want to again thank Dr. Wetstein for being here this evening, and we hope he'll come back and meet with us individually as a group, and we wish you the very best success with Cabrillo College. Thank you, sir. Now we're on to our consent agenda before the council. I've been asked to pull item number H. That's the consideration of resolutions approving a list of projects funded by Measure D and Senate Bill 1, We'll have that now under item 7 point, that'll be 7.1 rather than the consent agenda. Let's ask the public if the public would like to comment on any items on our consent agenda. Seeing no one rushing to the microphone, we'll hand this back to the council. Council, is there any items on the consent agenda that you would like to have pulled or questions or further discussion on? Councilmember Garcia.
Yeah, this is not to pull, but just to hopefully change on B. It's a motion approving attendance requested by Jimmy and Trina and myself to attend the 2018 Legislative Action Day on April the 18th. And I'd like to pull my name from there because I've decided not to attend because the next day there's 2 local meetings that I really need to attend here locally, so I won't be able to make it after all.
Well, thank you very much for considering that, because we have been to the Legislative Day numerous times in the past, and it is a stretch to go to Sacramento and return again the next day for a meeting. And so I'm in the same boat that you are, and I won't be attending this year either, but thank you for your consideration, and I'm certainly glad that Mayor Pro Tem Dutra and Councilmember Kaufman Gomez can attend and represent the city well. So thank you. Other consent agenda items, Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
Mayor, we're spending $300,000 on a project, and this is at our landfill as we're closing it. Could we just have a few comments from our Public Works Director about that project, please?
And which item is this?
Item, I think it's D. Right, there were some questions I sent his way, but it's really for the accountability purposes of spending $300,000.
Let's hear from our Public Works Director. Item D, this is the, for the public, this is the contract with Stearns, Conrad, and Schmidt Consulting Engineers doing business as SCS Field Services for landfill gas support. We need that. Gas support services for the city landfill not to exceed $300,000, authorizing budget appropriation in the amount not to exceed $300,000 from landfill closure fund. Mr. Palmisano.
Great. All right. Good evening, Mayor Hurst, members of the council. So the purpose of this contract is to provide basically landfill services landfill gas services for our landfill. As you put garbage into a landfill and it decomposes, one of the byproducts of that process is methane gas, which is a greenhouse gas. And so it's very important for the environment that we capture that gas rather than letting it get into the air. And so we have a whole environmental control system that collects the gas, and we actually send it to the county where it's burned as clean green energy. So that's a great system, but the system itself needs a lot of maintenance. And a big part of what this contract will be installing a number of new gas wells to ensure we continue to collect the gas in a way that keeps us into compliance with Air Board regulations. And so we'll probably be spending about $100,000 of this contract this year, putting in some new wells, and then in the next year and the year after, probably $100,000 each year. As well as we are closing the landfill, we need to put in more gas wells, and that helps contain all of the gas so it does not escape into the atmosphere. So that's mainly what this is about.
Thank you. And after 3 years, we'll renew it, or do you anticipate that, or do you think that's enough time?
We'll see how it goes once the landfill is fully closed. Probably we will just have a lower level of maintenance required for this kind of work, but it will be ongoing for 30 to 50 years that we'll be dealing with our landfill gas. So, yeah, it's a long-term proposition, but the cost will come down significantly once it's fully closed. And we do plan on coming to council in May with a solid waste update to tell you more about the closure, some of the new solid waste regulations that we're dealing with, including organics and food diversion requirements, and just give you an overall update on what's going on with solid waste.
Thank you. And this was also a competitive process for the contractor, including any union contracts to be submitted, or in terms of the RFP process?
Pardon me? Say that again.
It was a competitive bid process for all contractors,
right,
which included union, if they had any type of expertise for this.
This is actually more in the realm of consultant services.
Okay.
So it is a little bit different in that sense. It's not bid in the same way. You select based on the most qualified consultant, but we also take into consideration best value.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Landfill gas is an important thing that's regulated by the Air Board, and I do represent Santa Cruz County on the Air Board, and so it's something that every agency, everyone with a landfill has to abide by. Any other comments on the consent agenda, Dr. Bilicich?
Item C talks about the senior center and a restroom that's going to be upgraded with ADA compliance. And I just wanted to say that I think this is a great thing. I think the seniors will greatly appreciate that. It's things have been going forward in the senior center, very positive things. So just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know the seniors have waited a long time for these improvements at the Senior Citizen Center, and they are costly, but we need to move forward on that. And I have seen the results of that, and they are good. And so I'm anticipate the additional allocation being put to very good use. Any other questions on the consent agenda? Councilmember Kaufman Gomez?
I just want to continue the comments about the senior center. Having the opportunity to go there to see the luncheon and the center itself, great job on the bathrooms and having that water resource there. And I know that this is to continue on the maintenance of a building that we currently own and making sure that it's the batten down the hatches with the roofing, because I know that there's a chronic problem with that, which is why these bids were higher, because of the water damage that the building had endured. So good jobs being done here. The seniors are very happy, and I'd like to see that kind of progress.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Hernandez.
You know, I was there last week too, and those restrooms are really nice. They look like the Applebee's restrooms. I know they need some ADA stuff left to do, but they look great. Saying that, I would also like to make the motion to move the consent agenda.
I'll second.
A motion by Hernandez, second by Garcia.
Mayor, if I may, real quick.
Please.
Mayor, Council, if you all recall, last year I requested Mr. Palamisano and Jackie attend the Legislative Day in Sacramento. I will be attending this year on behalf of the city with the council members. So,
Thank you very much for that extra effort. It's important we have easy access to our legislators in Sacramento. Councilmember Bilicich, you have a question on the motion?
No, I was going to second, but that's fine.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion to approve the consent agenda? We had motion by Hernandez, second by Councilmember Garcia. Roll call, please.
Bilicich,
Yes.
Kaufman Gomez,
Yes.
Dutra, Garcia,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Hurst.
Yes, and consent agenda is so approved. This brings us to item H, consideration of the approval list of projects funded by Measure D and Senate Bill number 1. We have a brief report as I understand it.
Good evening, Mayor Hurst, members of the council. My name is Murray Fonts. I'm principal engineer with the Public Works and Utilities Department, and I'd like to speak to you about the 2 project lists that are presented this evening for your approval. In 2016, Santa Cruz County voters approved Measure D, a 1/2 cent sales tax that funds transportation projects for 30 years. The measure allocates a portion of the funding to Watsonville annually and requires that each year council approve a 5-year expenditure plan. This year's project list is different from the list approved last year, as adjustments were made to allow for new funding sources and the changing needs of the city. Next year, similar adjustments may be made to the list. Last year, Governor Brown signed Senate Bill 1, providing funding for road maintenance, rehabilitation, and safety projects. The funding is apportioned annually by formula to eligible cities and counties. To be eligible for funding, the city must provide the California Transportation Commission with a list of projects that have been approved by council. Like Measure D, the SB1 project list is updated and presented to the council each year. Tonight, I will review recent and proposed transportation projects, including those funded by Measure D and SB1, and request that council approve the proposed project list for these two programs. The city was allocated $750,000 in Measure D funding in fiscal year 2017 and 18. It was or will be used on pedestrian and bicycle safety training at Watsonville schools, provide pedestrian and traffic safety improvements such as the flashing beacons on Main Street at Peck, contribute toward the downtown revitalization efforts such as the lighting on the trees on Main Street. Funds were also used on a one-time cost to the Regional Transportation Commission to administer Measure D, and the balance was retained to assist with upcoming projects. With regards to SB1, due to the timing of when the bill was passed and implemented, the city received partial funding late in the current fiscal year and will use it in future projects. Construction projects completed within the last year with funding sources other than Measure D and SB1 include improvements to Freedom Boulevard from Bodas to Alta Vista, the Freedom Boulevard Adaptive Signal Project, and the Sidewalk Infill Project with improvements on Main Street and Harkins Slough Road. During the current fiscal year, the city secured $3.8 million in transportation grants from funding sources other than Measure D and SB1 for planning, design, and construction of projects. These include the Lincoln Street Safety Improvements Project, preparation of complete streets plans for the downtown area and for 15 city schools, design and permitting for the Lee Road Bicycle and Pedestrian Trail, improvements to a portion of Freedom Boulevard, bicycle safety improvements that include green bike lanes at various locations within the city, and improvements to portions of Green Valley Road and Airport Boulevard. Projects on the Measure D list this year can be broken into two groups. Pedestrian and bicycle projects include bicycle safety improvements at various locations, design of the Lee Road Trail, trail maintenance at various locations, construction of the Pajaro Valley High School Trail, and pedestrian and traffic safety improvements at various locations. Road projects include downtown revitalization, improvements to Freedom Boulevard from Alta Vista to Green Valley, and from Green Valley to Airport, improvements to Green Valley Road from Freedom to the city limits, and to maintain roads at various locations. The Measure D projects are spread throughout the city as shown on this map. Measure D projects to be built this coming fiscal year include bicycle safety improvements, trail maintenance, pedestrian and traffic safety improvements, road maintenance and design of downtown revitalization, as well as design of the Green Valley Road improvements and the Lee Road pedestrian trail. The city will receive $880,000 in SB1 funds in this fiscal year. SB1 projects include road projects on Airport Boulevard from Freedom to 600 feet west, on Airport Boulevard from Freedom to the city limits, and on Airport Boulevard from Westgate, Larkin intersection to Home Road. This is a project that includes the crosswalk that we've discussed tonight. The proposed project includes installing flashing beacons and a median island in the center of the road to use as a pedestrian refuge. Other projects include improvements on Green Valley Road from Struve Slough to Freedom and road repair at various locations. Pedestrian projects include the citywide curb ramp program and the Lincoln Street safety improvements, which will be from East Lake to Riverside. There's also a group of traffic projects that include citywide signal upgrades, work on signs, markings, and striping throughout the city, and also upgrades to signal and lighting. This map shows both the Measure D and the SB1 projects. SB1 projects to be done in the coming fiscal year include two of the projects on Airport Boulevard, the one on Green Valley Road, as well as the curb ramp program. Many projects within the SB and the Measure D funding sources are combining funds. So if you look at the list of projects, you may see the same projects show up on each list. The city has a number of projects that will be built over the next 5 years that will be funded through other sources. Pedestrian and bicycle projects include bicycle safety improvements, that is green bike lanes, the Harkensoo Road pedestrian and bicycle bridge at Highway 1, Hazelwood Park Trail, the rail trail at Lee Road and Walker Street. Road projects include Elm Street from Marchant to Lincoln, on Ohlone Parkway from the railroad crossing to West Beach. Traffic projects include the Beach Street at Ohlone Parkway Signal, the Freedom Boulevard at Sydney Avenue Signal, the Green Valley Road Adaptive Signal Project, and operational improvements at Main Street and Riverside Drive. Additional projects with other funding include wetlands restoration at Lower and Upper Struve Slough, utility undergrounding projects on Freedom Boulevard and Lake Avenue, and preparation of the complete streets plans for the downtown area, for the city schools, as well as the Freedom Boulevard Plan Line project. This map shows all the projects presented this evening. Some of the other funded projects that are currently in progress include the wetlands restoration, the Freedom Boulevard undergrounding, the complete streets in the downtown area, and the Freedom Boulevard Plan Line project. By the end of the year, the Hazelwood Park, Green Valley Road Adaptive Signal, and complete streets within the schools projects will begin. SB 1 provides the city with $880,000 annually for transportation projects. In the next 5 years, SB 1 will provide funding for close to 1/3 of the city's traffic projects. This June, there is a statewide ballot initiative, Proposition 69, that would protect SB 1 funds from being diverted for non-transportation purposes. This November, there may be a different state ballot initiative that would be a constitutional amendment to eliminate the recently enacted SB 1 funds and require that future transportation funding increases be approved by a 2/3 vote of the state legislature and a majority vote of Californians. If this were to happen, the city would lose $880,000 in annual transportation funding, and many of the projects discussed this evening would be delayed. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt resolutions approving the list of transportation projects to be funded by Measure D and the list of projects to be funded by SB 1. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fonce. Let's see if there's any questions from the council. Councilmember Garcia.
You mentioned about the funding available to address the crosswalk at Holm and Airport Boulevard. Is there any consideration of putting a stoplight there? And I ask because it's not just the crossing, pedestrian crossing, it's also trying to make a left-hand turn from Holm to Airport. That's really, really dangerous. So is there any consideration about a stoplight there?
Good evening, Council. Councilmember Garcia. The current studies haven't indicated that a signal is warranted, but we can certainly revisit that in light of recent activity that's been happening, but it's something we'll keep studying. Again, the current improvements are the flashing beacons, improvement of that crosswalk with the median island for now, but that doesn't mean that a signal couldn't come later.
Particularly for the cars, I mean, the pedestrians has to be a priority. But in terms of the cars, and I know Councilmember Trina has reported in the past seeing several accidents, car accidents there. And I know I get really scared when I have to make a left turn there. And I try not to go there, but...
Yeah, it is a tricky intersection to do that, and again, with the amount of traffic that goes through there. But again, it's not currently proposed, but it doesn't mean that we can't revisit that and make sure that if a signal is warranted, a signal will go in.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bilicich, next.
I wanted to ask you about Green Valley Road in front of the towers. There again, we have 4 lanes. I think that road might be half city and half county. I'm not even sure. If it is there a way to do some kind of collaboration, much like the airport one, where there would be flashing lights where there'd be an island in the middle because it is so wide.
You're absolutely right. That actually is entirely in the county, just west of that crossing where the bus stop is a creek crossing, a little bridge, and that's where the county and city divides, right there.
Well, I know that they're at the towers.
Correct.
It's Watsonville PD.
Yeah, so the property itself
Right, at the
is
towers.
city limits, but the roadway in front is county.
Okay.
But again, we do collaborate with the county all the time, and we can bring this area up again to see how we can make it a little bit more visible, a little bit safer.
I would appreciate any support because there are, a couple of schools there. People do cross the street. It's dangerous, and the speed limit is. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's there. It's rapid. There's a lot of traffic, and I just worry about a similar incident at some point happening. It's kind of a scary place. The other one is East Lake, like right by East Lake Village Shopping Center. Is that state highway there?
Correct. Yes, all of East Lake Avenue is the state highway 152.
So how can we get the state to help us out with something there?
We have, as you mentioned earlier, we have brought it up in the past. We'll keep working with them and asking them what, if anything, they have in mind for now, and again, bring up the concerns that are brought up by all the residents here and the council members to see what, if anything, that they can do.
I think residents are very, very concerned, but the state should be now too, and the county, everybody, because we're headlines. We're headlines in a negative way about traffic fatalities or injuries or whatever. So somebody needs to kind of step it up, I think.
Correct. And again, we'll bring up the Vision Zero program that we've been working on, and again, the state has to be our partner in that. And
right.
Part of being a partner is taking a look at all the state routes that run through our city. So we'll have that conversation continue and bring it up again and again.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's Councilman Hernandez at this time.
I know that you said that home in airport, we're going to be looking at median islands and beacon crosswalks. And generally, I'm for this traffic signal because I think it'll reduce speed. But is there anything else that we can do to reduce speed on airport? I was actually there yesterday, and I was actually on a portion that didn't have any sidewalks, and I was trying to step back a little bit, and there's work trucks there that go 60 miles an hour, and they're fully loaded work trucks. They're not like little sports cars. They're going way too fast in that area, and that's why I'm for this also, the traffic signal, because I think it'll reduce speed in that section. In airport, all of airport, it's like a speedway there. But is there anything else that we can do in terms of traffic calming there?
We can actually look at a number of different options. Again, going back to the Home Road one, sometimes median islands assist in that respect. There's bulb outs similar to what we did down here in the downtown area on Main Street. So there's a number of things that we can look at to see how those can help in slowing down traffic.
I guess at the crosswalks, we'd put bulb outs there, because it's kind of a strange road to put bulb outs on airport.
It is, but in terms of traffic calming, those are the types of things that can happen, especially where there's crossings. So I don't know specifically how big they might be, or how it would work specifically, but anything that can reduce the distance a pedestrian has to cross would make the crossings a little bit better, because there would be less time actually within travel lanes and some refuges that they can go to. So there's just one, and again, off the top of my head, but it's something that we could study a little bit more and see how we can work to make drivers more aware and travel the speed limit that they should be traveling, and pedestrians be aware and make eye contact with drivers, and just a number of things aside from just the infrastructure itself, but the education component, as Councilmember Kaufman Gomez and Councilmember Bilsich and our mayor this evening have mentioned, everybody has to do their part, and I think the education component is a really powerful avenue to also get out there and have that awareness raised so that everybody can do their part, because again, it's not going to be just one component of all the people that use our roads that has to change their behavior. It's everybody together.
And I think, are we looking at things like the pedestrian hybrid beacons, what they call the HAWK, high intensity activated crosswalks? Because I think that airport would be a good location for one of those as opposed to just a beacon crosswalk.
I did write that down when you brought it up earlier, so I'm going to look at and see where and how those might work.
Councilmember Kaufman Gomez, please.
Thank you. We know that Caltrans has a downtown, bucket list of things that they can do. When was the last conversation we've had with Caltrans about doing anything? I do know that we have a couple safety concern areas. For example, we're going to be having 16 units for the Henson property there, with at least that number of families that will be looking to possibly be crossing. So we're going to be seeing a lot more pedestrian traffic downtown. And it would be much nicer to see if we can get Caltrans to be proactive, at least with the crosswalk in front of that building, rather than in hindsight. So where are we at in engaging Caltrans to do something about a crosswalk there?
Actually, Caltrans is a partner and part of our planning document. They've been part of our Downtown Complete Streets planning grant, so they are actively engaged in that document and will be actively engaged throughout the whole process. So they are, again, our partner in that. So they are on board with whatever our community goes for and moves towards as we do the public outreach for the downtown plan with our businesses, with our residents. They are, again, part of that planning process and are actively participating.
So that means that the public sessions where we're inviting the public to come in and comment and speak, they will be in attendance. Will they also be in attendance for our presentations when they come to council so that people can ask questions of Caltrans directly?
We can ask them to be here. In light of the question, our first outreach effort will be actually at this Friday's Farmers Market for the Downtown Complete Streets plan. Caltrans is currently not scheduled to be there, but we can very much ask them to be at the next ones and be made available. And they will be looking at all the comments that come in as part of the plan. But again, we can ask them to be in attendance when we come to council and other events.
Mayor, Council, you all may recall that when Public Works went forward and started doing the downtown revitalization for this portion of Main Street, the part of the plan was to coordinate with Caltrans to take the design all the way to Ford Street to ensure that there's complete bike routes and bulb outs and crosswalks, and they have been working on that for quite a bit of time now, but Caltrans is still engaged, and we're still trying to actively work with them to make sure that it happens faster than later. But then the other component of that is the funding piece that we'll have to look at once Caltrans approves that.
Well, it's much easier to have something that's shovel-ready, so that when we do have the funds, we can get going on it, rather than to say now we have money and it's going to take us this much longer to do all of our studies, and extending out the delay and actually getting something put on the ground. So we definitely need to make sure that we're continuing with that effort. The airport, we're going to go back to there again. There, in light of research that I've been doing, and I was just on the League of Cities webinar conference this morning, one of the items that was brought up was Assembly Bill 2363. And what this is doing is this allows the speed laws to be under the local authority. Could you please check into this to see what we can do to perhaps support this as an option? Because we were in a bind at this council meeting maybe 15, 18 months ago to increase the speed limit, which the following day there was an accident in this intersection, which was completely predicted by knowing the common sense of that area. We would like to see what we can do that can reduce some of these things that we're forced into. We're forced into a corner to increase speed limits in areas that I believe that we'll probably see that there's a higher incident of accidents. And if you can also let us know or get back to us on the changes of the before and the after. Because I think as much documentation as we can show this argument, we should be able to go back and tell our legislators, this is broken, we need to fix this, and we need to have better jurisdiction, better opportunity for us to make the local decision on things like this so that we can, avoid this kind of accident from occurring again if we can bringing down the speeds, because the way we did this 85th percentile didn't make sense, but we were obligated, I know, by law. And if we can work on getting the legislative piece of it, then it would be easier for us to go ahead and implement what we need to do for the public safety in this community, especially since we're an outlier. And as an outlier, we also need to make sure we're engaging in a more grant opportunity that's out there so that we can see about getting more funding to be a little bit more of the high priority of getting some of these accidents reduced in any way, shape, or form we can do it. Waiting for SB1, waiting for Measure D is not enough money for us to do these things, and we're going to definitely need to be looking at other funding sources to get things done sooner. So could you please check into the AB 2363 for us and see if there's anything we can do to help this along?
Most definitely.
And next week, I will see if there's a possibility that we can get, I guess it's Assemblymember Laura Friedman, when we're in Sacramento. Maybe we'll have a chance to see if we can scope her out as well. Maybe our lobbyists could find out a little bit more.
Mayor, Council, if I may add to your comments, Councilmember Kaufman Gomez, part of what came before Council about 15 months ago was because the city had not adopted the new studies over a period of 5 to 8 years, the City Council basically had no choice because it did not allow the police department to issue citations or use radar to catch speeders on any roads in the city that did not adopt that. So we were kind of backed into a corner. So we agree that the speed limits need to be looked at carefully, but it was also part of public safety to ensure the officers can issue tickets and citations appropriately as needed.
And what stage are we with the enforcement for that particular road to see if we can start getting people to be a bit more educated that we can cite and we will be citing in terms of that activity?
I think the police department has been underway, as well as Public Works. As you may recall, last council meeting, we announced that they did do the new crosswalk here downtown. But in communicating with Public Works, I don't think the general public realizes that there's now lights sitting there for them to hit the button, because sitting out my window every day, 9 out of 10 people don't hit that button. So I think there is a component of education that the community needs to be engaged in. So it's not just Main Street, it's not just Airport, it's in general, and we're working on that.
And I think the other part of that goes along with it is, for example, the accident that we did have that was on Main Street, looking at our lighting in general. I think that we have a lot of the homeless encampments that are popping out with people that are popping out in the dark area there, and there's not a whole lot of light down there. So I think that just look at the evening snapshot or the dusk snapshot where, people are coming out before it's brought into daylight from a lot of these crevices that we have here, and they are blind spots. And if we need to be looking at lighting as well as, the crosswalk and the other pedestrian things that we're trying to implement here, that might have somebody that could save a life somewhere. And
correct. And actually in the downtown area, we have been upgrading our lighting, especially in the decorative light fixtures downtown. And then in general around the city, we are looking primarily at intersection locations to make sure that those are visible, the lights are working. So that is something that our traffic staff is indeed looking at.
And what's the best way, if a resident here knows that there's a light out, what's the best way for them to tell you where it's located and to identify whatever pole or wherever it is that it's out?
Excellent question. There's actually 2 really good ways to do that. One is to call our customer service line. That's the 768-3133 number, and they can report it if they have. And helpful would be to have the pole number and the approximate address, and if it's out or what kind of state it's in, so that they can quickly identify which pole it is and how they need to address it. The other way is to go online. We do have the forms online that they can fill
Okay.
out, contact us, either of those ways.
Thank you. I'm sure the public needs to be aware of how to do so. Thank you.
Councilmember Bilicic.
I'll just make a motion to pass this.
Second.
We have a motion of approval for item 7.1, the former item H. This is the consideration of the approval list, and a second by, who made the motion again? Councilmember Bilicic motion, second by Hernandez. We have any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Kaufman Gomez?
I know that we have a huge wish list here for this particular community, and these are some of the priorities that have flushed out to the surface here. And we're encouraging the public to let us know other areas that you have of concern, so that we can actually make sure that we're putting that on this list and getting them cycled through to get some of these other areas in our community addressed for safety.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Hernandez.
I know that the Tuttle one was mentioned, but I think also Palm Street and Burlington were also of concern to constituents. And also the one that's right in front of the skate shop, Forever Fly, that crosswalk, but I think that one's already being addressed, as well as the one by the post office, or right here, actually, right downstairs. But yeah, if we can, address some of these issues, and I think it's personally the speeding that happens. Is there any way to find out what the average differences in speed in the portion that we have revitalized compare the area by the skate shop, for example? Is there a way to tell if it's done any difference in reducing speed, at least in this section over here?
Sure, we can go out and take speed information now that's entirely in and compare it. So we can do a little bit more of that, and part of that we can also use that information as part of our plan line moving forward. As much information as we can.
Because I think it would really help out with Main Street if we actually had it all revitalized the way we did it here, and reduce those 3 extra feet that would limit speed a little bit more.
Thank you very much. I think this is an excellent discussion by the council here this evening, and a great presentation by Mr. Fonce and Ms. Rodriguez in responding to the questions. I would hope that the public gets a chance to take a look at this long list and see how it's prioritized and see how it's funded and support its funding as well. We can talk about all these things forever. In fact, some of these projects on this list were projects from another century ago when I was on the council. And so to have them shovel-ready is a great idea, but to have the financial backing and the cooperation of the RTC, of the state, of Caltrans, and most importantly, the support of the public to help move these things along, and that means the public needs to be engaged too with, if they can't attend an RTC meeting, they sure as heck can write a letter, and they can write us a letter too, and we can hear from the public. But the public also has to understand the constraints, the financial constraints, and the reality of what's on the ground and our partnership with the county, as well as the Caltrans organization. That's why we have to be able to lean on our state legislators and get the force behind us so that we can actually move forward on these things and not just have them sit on a list for 20 years. Another comment, please?
Yes, sorry, Mayor. Murray, can you also make the announcement of the seat that's available for one of the committees with the RTC? I think it's a bicycle or...
Yes. The Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission has a bicycle advisory committee that meets every other month. They have positions for cities, counties, and special agencies. The city of Watsonville has a voting member but does not have an alternate, and District 4 of the county does not have a voting member or an alternate. The voting member was Kim Acole, and he passed away recently from a heart attack. So the Regional Transportation Commission will be recruiting for people who would like to serve on in these positions on this committee.
So please encourage anybody in the public here or in this community that may be able to be a representative for those two positions come forward and let our Public Works know or Santa Cruz Regional Transportation Commission so that we have that void filled with a representative of the South County. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Hernandez, one final comment, but no, thank you. Well, I think that this is a calling to the public this evening to get involved, to be active, to weigh in on these circumstances, and to advise your representative, not just the city council, but also your county supervisors and your RTC commissioners and your bicycle representatives and everybody else from Caltrans all the way up to the governor to get us some the help and relief that we need in congestion management, speed control, bike and pedestrian safety, and motorist safety as well. Let's have a roll call, please, Mr. Clerk.
Bilicich?
Yes.
Kaufman Gomez?
Yes.
Garcia? Hernandez?
Yes.
Hurst?
Yes, and so approved. Thank you very much. This leads us on to our next item on the agenda, and that is item number 8. This is reports to the council. There will be no action taken on this item, but it is a report to the public as well as the council, and this is a presentation regarding utility user tax exemptions. And we'll have an oral report and an opportunity for council questions and public input if there is, and we'd love to have it. Can we have the oral report, please?
My name is Marissa Duran, and I'm a financial analyst with the Finance Department. And Cindy and I are here tonight to provide you with information and explain our utility users tax exemption program, and hopefully answer all of your questions in regards to this subject and tell you how we have implemented this program throughout the city. So the utility user tax ordinance has been around since 1989. It has been amended a couple of times in 1993, 1995, and 2001. This last amendment that occurred on December 23rd, 2016, included the exemption that we're here to talk about tonight. So the new exemption includes low income, senior citizens over the age of 65, and the disabled. The statutory and constitutional exemptions have been around since the first utility users tax ordinance. They basically exempt government-owned buildings and all schools. The exemptions we are here to talk about tonight are as follows. There is a low-income exemption. The city piggybacks on the criteria set forth by the PG&E for their CARE program. Residents that participate in the CARE program with PG&E are automatically exempt from the gas and the electric tax of this chapter. There is also an exemption for the seniors and the disabled residents. They must apply, however, and if they meet the criteria, then they are also exempt. For seniors, they must simply be 65, and for the disabled, they must meet the criteria established by the Social Security Administration. Once the criteria is met, we notify PG&E and they are exempt. So you might be wondering, how have we gotten the word out? We've really tried to reach as many folks as possible. We've notified PG&E as soon as we had this implemented to exempt all of our CARE participants, and that they did not need to apply and just go ahead and automatically exempt them on the April 1st billing of 2017. We've also sent out a flyer in all of our city utility bills. We've posted the information on our city's website under the Finance Department page. We have the application available in both English and Spanish. We've posted it a couple of times in the Register Pajaronian, as well as have included it in our town newsletter that is also sent out with our city utility bills. So how does a resident apply for this exemption? Once again, Care participants are automatically exempt and they do not need to apply. Seniors and disabled customers are asked to complete the application that is available on our website that I will show you on the next slide. The application is available in both English and Spanish. Seniors are asked to turn in proof of their age, most commonly a driver's license, with also a copy of their bill so that we can name match and make sure the driver's license application and their bill are in the same name. For the disabled residents, we ask that they complete the application, send in proof from the Social Security office that they are enrolled in the SDI program, and also a copy of their PG&E bill. And once again, we name match for the proof. Once a customer meets the criteria, we notify PG&E and they implement the exemption on the following billing cycle. So these are the applications that we have available on our website under our finance page, and we have them both in English and in Spanish. Some of our most commonly asked question is, do I need to apply annually? No. Once a customer is exempt, they no longer need to apply as long as they are still the account holder. The care program exemptions are as good as long as the customer is still enrolled in the program. We also get asked, what if I apply through the care program? Do I need to keep reapplying? And the answer is yes, through PG&E. They do need to reapply and make sure they meet that. But with us, as long as they participate in that program, they are exempt. Another question we receive commonly is, when will this be effective? Once we receive the application and all of the verification takes place, it's usually about a 60-day process, and with PG&E, it's on the next billing cycle. So finance really likes numbers, so I was excited to get a little slide in here with some numbers. So just to give you feedback on how many participants we have 6,650 residential customers that are enrolled in the care program and are currently exempt from the electric and utility user tax charges. We also have 338 seniors and disabled customers that are exempt through our program. So in total, we have about 7,000 customers citywide. This concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ram. Let's see if the council has questions, and then we'll see if the public has comments here. Questions from the council? Councilmember Kaufman Gomez, please.
Have you at all talked about Monterey Bay Community Power? As of July, we'll be having the residential electricity going through that on the PG&E bill. My understanding is Monterey Bay Community Power is still going to honor the discount for this particular program as well. But it might also be helpful to engage with them if they're doing anything for outreach to public, since they will be doing the electric portion of the PG&E bill.
Yeah, we can engage with them because the ordinance does state electricity, and as they will be supplying electricity, that would be within the same ordinance. So we will communicate with them. Thank you for that suggestion.
Thank you.
Councilmember Garcia.
You spoke about, and I understand in terms of the application for the city. How do they apply for care?
So the care program is run through PG&E, and PG&E also has an application online. So if they can Google it, and the application comes up, and it has all of the requirements, and it's a pretty simple form. It's a one-pager. So it should be pretty easy for them to apply.
And then the 6,650 residents, this is citywide?
That's correct.
That's
in
correct.
Our city limits.
And do we know, I don't know how large the population is for our senior citizen area. Do you know how large that is? And whatever amount that is, do you know what percentage of that area takes advantage?
No, I don't know in terms of how many are seniors and how many are not. I don't.
Well,
think
they all have to be seniors to live there.
No, they do not. Not for care.
No, I'm not talking about care. I'm talking about our program for the city, because you don't have to be on care. Or do you have to be on care? You don't.
No.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, in terms of what the city is offering, we have a large senior, well, that's basically Nancy's area.
My concern is, I think there's 900 homes in that area. So I don't know how many people are in, but that's 900 homes that probably are most eligible, because you have to be 65 and you can move in there at 55, I think.
Right,
So,
55.
but most of them, I would think, would be eligible. But I think there's been a lot of confusion over, well, I have to be a PG&E care person. No, you have to be a senior or disabled, and you also qualify. If you are in the care program, you're automatically involved in this. But there is more, there was something more written somewhere, and I haven't been able to put my hands on it yet, about the cell phone usage and landlines and all of that. And I don't see that in this right now. And I could be mistaken, but I think when it was originally presented, there was talk about cell phones. If you had a cell phone, the tax was going to be exempt.
Well, what happened is that on the last amendment in 2016, it added cell phones. Cell phones were not a part of the ordinance, and so it added cell phones, and then it also included this exemption, but the exemption did not apply to cell phones. It's only the tax. It was a new tax for them.
Mayor, Council, if I may expand on that. The ordinance, we modeled after Salinas at the time, and the rate for the phone usage was on residential lines, but the decrease in residential lines over the last decade, we went ahead and brought in an amendment that reduced the tax, I believe, from 6.5% down to 5.5% to capture cell phones. But there was no exemption measure mentioned at that time because we were modeling Salinas's at the time.
I hear what you say. I can respect what you say, but I don't think that was the understanding of the constituents. Because I've heard time and time again, what happened? Where is this tax? How come? I thought we were taking the tax off, period. And I said, well, you know, the PG&E bill, yeah, but what about our cell phones? What about the water bill? What about that tax is still there? And I don't think that the residents understood that those taxes were going to stay or be, that they were going to stay. Just PG&E is the only one that what we're saying is exempt. Is that right?
That is correct. That is per the ordinance that was voted and approved upon. The cell phones, again, were not fully captured previously, and the recommendation was to bring it forth with an amendment and to reduce the tax that was being paid, which was 6.5% down to 5.5%, to capture cell phones that were not currently being captured in the collection.
Well, if you said they were 6.5% and then they were going to be reduced to 5.5%, weren't they already taxed at 6.5%?
The majority of the phone lines that were taxed were landlines, not cell phones.
So are landlines still taxed?
Landlines are still taxed, but they're at the 5.5% as well.
Okay, so landlines are taxed, cell phones are taxed, the water bill is taxed, garbage, all of that, our own. The only one this applies to is PG&E, is what you're telling me.
Electric and gas, correct.
The tax does not apply to garbage or sewer, only water on our city bills.
It was a 6% tax there, right?
On our water.
Water,
yes.
okay.
Just for clarity, the exemption is for the increase on the tax or the total tax?
No, the exemption is for the electric and the gas portion of the tax.
The total tax on the electric and gas.
Though, yeah.
Regardless of what people thought or said, they did vote for this, and they did read the ballot statement, hopefully, and so they got what they voted for in this case. So there might be some confusion out there, but there usually is. I think if we had the actual the actual ballot language, that would clarify it for us, and maybe that's something could be sent to the council so that the council is fully apprised as to what the voters did approve. Councilmember Kaufman-Gomez.
Maybe it would also be helpful if we can go back on record on what date it was that we actually had this conversation to go ahead and do the vote to place it on the ballot, and that way we can, anybody that wants to go back for as a refresher can reference that conversation at that time.
There again, it's great to rehash these conversations, but the voters did speak on the voter language, and that's what we got.
That's true. But voters passing a tax, a senior community passing a tax on themselves, it's not too likely that kind of thing happens. I really think there was a misunderstanding in what transpired. But I'm glad that we are clarifying it tonight.
Well, I'm sure if there's any questions that the public might have, that Mr. Duran and others will be able to handle that and fully explain the history as well as what voters did approve, and maybe what they didn't approve.
Well, we also see that there were only 338 seniors or disabled customers that were exempt from this, correct?
That's correct.
That's not very many.
I do want to point out, though, that is 338 that are on top of CARE. So within that CARE number, the 6,650, there are very likely seniors and disabled people that are included in that CARE number. So that's only 338 on top of the CARE.
But there's also a lot of people that are seniors that aren't in the senior community. So those are 900 households, but you're talking citywide. So you could easily have 338 people that are seniors and disabled that may not be on any CARE program.
They are welcome to apply via the form that's available on the city's website under the Finance Department.
Mayor, Council,
This meeting will help advertise this a little bit.
Mayor, Council, if I may add, I'll read the quick portion of the ballot language. It says, this measure would amend Watsonville's utility users tax ordinance to 1, modernize the telecommunications part of the UUT, 2, reduce the tax rate on telecommunications from 6 to 5.5%, and 3, exempt seniors, low-income persons, and the disabled from the energy portion of the tax.
And for the benefit of the council and the public as well, Councilmember Kaufman Gomez had asked for the date. June 16th, 2016 is when the council took action to place this question on the ballot. You can go back to that staff report and the council meeting as well to follow what discussion was part of that decision.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
Thank you. So we have about 7,000 exempt customers currently. Do we have some idea of maybe what our cap or our outside numbers might actually be for how many people are missing out on this particular exemption that could potentially take advantage of it that were not?
Just to give you an idea of what that 7,000 number represents, it represents about 65% of customers that we believe have accounts.
65%.
Mm-hmm.
So we should see another maybe 3,500 eligible people, roughly.
No, 65% would be like the percentage of all customer accounts that are receiving the exemption. So the other 35% would include people like myself who won't qualify for the exemption. We believe PG&E wasn't able to give us the total number of accounts in Watsonville, so we're basing this off of our number of utility accounts, water utility accounts. We're assuming it would be roughly the same. There are roughly 10 to 11,000 accounts in the city. So we have the majority, actually, of our accounts, residential accounts, are qualifying for this exemption in one manner or another.
Thank you.
Well, here's a chance for the public to fill out their application, and if they're low income, they're probably already qualified under CARE, but if they're seniors or disabled, they might not be. And so here's a chance to fill out a new application. And it's a simple application, right? Nothing too complex? Thank you. Let's see if the public's got something to say about this. Anyone from the public wish to address the council on the presentation regarding the utility users tax exemptions? Seeing no one from the public wishing to discuss this with us at this time, we invite them to send us their comments and to contact Ms. Duran if there needs to be any additional clarification. Thank you very much. Councilmember Bilicic.
I have one part that I was reading. It says a yes vote will modernize the telecommunications language, reduce the telecommunications tax rate from 6% to 5.5%, and exempt seniors, low-income persons, and the disabled from the energy portion of the UUT. And I think that that is misleading because I don't think people realize that it was just the energy portion. The energy portion from what? So I'm just saying, that's it.
Well, that's why we always want the voters to read the voter language the election language very carefully. Seeing no public comments on this, we accept the report. Thank you very much. And now let's go on to our next item. This is public hearings, ordinances, and appeals. Item A, consideration of amendments to Title 14 zoning, Chapters 14 to 18 definitions, and Chapters 14 to 35 telecommunications by amending certain sections regarding permitting telecommunications facilities in the public right-of-way and establishing policies thereof. We'll have a presentation by Director Merriam and a chance for public input after a staff report and, of course, questions from the council and anybody else that wants to weigh in. So let's have our report on this item, please.
Good evening, Councilmember Hurst, members of the council. My name is Susie Merriam. I'm the director of the Community Development Department. The wireless telecom industry has developed new technology known as small cell transmission facilities and distributed antenna systems, which are bringing the next generation of wireless broadband data networks to communities like ours. Bless you. So what do these things look like? What are we exactly talking about? These facilities can be mounted on existing utility poles, street lights, and other types of facilities in the public right-of-way. You've probably seen these types of installations in other cities in the county over the last few years. The enhanced service is meant to benefit communities by providing reliable and fast data networks and also filling in the gaps between cell towers. State and federal law requires that local governments allow these types of installations in their communities. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of federal and state laws that require this and really limit what local governments can allow or regulate. The city has very little discretion in what we can require and review for small cells in the public right-of-way because of these federal and state preemptions. Just for an example, state and federal laws preempt local authority. They prohibit us from discrimination between one provider and another. We cannot deny an application if it prevents personal wireless service. There are strict time limitations for permits to be reviewed and approved. They prohibit radio frequency emissions concerns for the basis of permit decisions as long as those emissions don't exceed FCC regulations. And it entitles telephone companies to locate wireless facilities in the public right-of-way. So the proposed ordinance creates a city council policy which can be modified from time to time to keep up with changes in technology as well as state and federal laws. The ordinance makes the permit process administrative and managed by the Public Works Department, which has jurisdiction over everything that happens in the public right-of-way. It will rank land uses which are preferred for telecommunications facilities installations in the public right-of-way. This goes through with residential areas being the least preferred locations. The city cannot prohibit the installations in residential areas when they are on PG&E or other public poles. It also includes design standards for height as well as concealment. So the most preferred location would be on a city-owned support structure, which would give the city the ability to further regulate the design as well as location. The least preferred location in the policy, again, would be in a residential zone. So we'd have in the proposed ordinance standard conditions of approval to protect public health and safety. There is a limited appeals process with the city manager presiding over appeals. Standard indemnification insurance requirements to protect the city, as well as posting on the poles in the public right-of-way that informs the community. So what do these things look like in real life? I'm going to give you a couple examples of really not good examples and then some better concealed examples. As you can see in this one, you've got an unconcealed antenna, you've got some wires, you've got a lot of equipment going all the way down the pole. This is something that we don't want to see. Again, this is actually in Los Gatos. You can see it's got this big above ground equipment cabinet. It has little antennas on top of it. None of this is concealed. You've got the antennas sticking out all over the place, and then also unconcealed equipment on the PG&E pole. And then finally, this you can see a bunch of equipment cabinets. This is probably for various items, including the signals, but you can see equipment cabinets for the tower, for the antenna. You can see the large antenna on top of the light pole. These are things that we're going to try and minimize through our ordinance and policy. So better ideas or better design options are include this one, where you just have the concealed antenna at the top of the pole, and then just streamlined, minimized equipment cabinets. And the same thing in these two examples as well. So we're really trying to minimize the visible distraction of the antenna and the installation, and then make sure that our goal is to put these in commercial and industrial areas first, with the least preference to residential zones. The Planning Commission considered the proposed ordinance amendment and council policy at their April 3rd, 2018 meeting, and voted 5-1 to recommend that the City Council approve the proposed ordinance amendment and policy relating to small cell installations in the public right-of-way. Just to note, we all received a letter from Verizon. We received one, staff did, prior to the Planning Commission meeting, and then we received another letter just prior to this meeting. And just want to let you know that we've got the city's consultant, we've got Tripp May from Telecom Law Firm, to help address any of these questions if you are concerns, if you have any questions regarding that. And this concludes my presentation.
Let's see if there's any questions from the council, and the public will have a moment too. Councilmember Garcia.
Although you didn't mention in your presentation, in your staff report, there is mention about that where there no longer will be any public hearings. And I'm understanding in terms of federal and state laws that limit local government in prohibiting this new cell connections. However, the residents in District 5, they want to have a voice on decisions that the council makes. And so in addition to the Register Pajaronian and the Sentinel, how will residents be informed about any new cell facilities, and how will they be able to express their opinions?
This modification only applies to facilities, these small cells that are going into the public right-of-way.
Right.
And so these will not be noticed in the Pajaronian Sentinel or to adjacent or residents or owners within 500 feet. This does not change our requirements for any facilities going onto private property. So we will be following the same requirements that we always have for any cell towers or installations on private property in the city. And the reason that we are proposing this change is because there's so much that has been preempted by state and federal law. There's really nothing we can do to prohibit many of these installations and then we also have a short time period that we have to review and approve these installations that really doesn't give the city the time to go through a public process, go through an appeal process, because essentially by the time it would be done, the shot clock or the time period we have to review these would be up, and essentially these facilities would be deemed approved and they'd go in anyway. So because we are preempted, it would just be a frustrating process all around if we went
And
through
I'm
this.
understanding that completely. What I'm not understanding is in terms of our citizens, our residents need to be informed and they need to have a voice. And so is there not any ability to have a voice or be informed at least?
So there is some notice still in this particular ordinance. It's posted notice at the site, required to be of a specific size, with information that the public who is affected by that notice can see it. People who live near that area can contact the city and provide their information, their feedback. The director can't take action on an application until at least 10 days after that notice has been posted and the applicant has proven that the post has been up there.
Okay.
There is one other set of applications that are covered under a special set of regulations under federal law. Those still require posted notice, but because federal law says that if it fits certain criteria, it has to be approved, those ones don't have much opportunity at all for public input because it wouldn't change it either way. We give them notice so that something is happening, and if it affects their immediate vicinity, like if they're going to be doing work in the street, they'll get notice of that as well. But that input process has been regulated out under that specific type of modification process.
Okay. And my next question is to you. It's about the Verizon letter that all the council members received also this morning. They expressed a concern. What is your response to that concern?
My response is that the interpretation that Verizon has of their legal rights is a very narrow reading of the broader scope of what's happening in the law. Under state law, it's true that telephone corporations like Verizon have a statewide franchise to use and occupy the public rights of way, but not anywhere they please and however they please. Local government still has some authority to regulate aesthetics, transportation matters, the way in which everybody uses this shared space. And so the ordinance takes that into account and provides the city with the tools it needs in order to make sure that the deployments that are going to occur are in line with the city's own values. Other aspects of their letter are similar types of readings. My assessment is that this ordinance will not draw a legal challenge just on its face, and if it did, the city would win.
And so are we formally going to respond to them, or are we just going to ignore them?
If you'd like us to respond, we could certainly generate one, but it's not necessary at this point.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions from the council? Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
Thank you. In this, what's the difference or in terms of where we expect this to happen, whether they're private polls or city polls? Are we looking to encourage them to be on the city polls? What is our outcome and our method?
So the ordinance does promote deployment on city-owned polls, mostly because we want to reduce the number of new obstructions in the public right-of-way. So we don't require the carriers to use city-owned polls. We encourage it. We make it a more streamlined process. But we would also encourage the deployment on joint polls, PG&E polls, over the deployment of new polls in general.
So down a block, they decide that we want one in the middle of this block. They can just go ahead and punch a hole in the concrete and put one in there, or how are we going to make sure that they're actually using some of the inventory that might be in that neighborhood?
So the first step would be if they were going to come in and propose a new pole, they'd have to justify to the city that none of the existing poles were feasible alternatives, and they couldn't just say that's not feasible. They have to demonstrate it with a meaningful fact-based analysis. And only in those instances where the use of an existing pole is not going to be technically feasible as demonstrated with those types of fact-based evidences would we consider allowing them to install a new pole. And even at that stage, the new pole would likely be something more functional, like a street light, not just a pole in the right-of-way with antennas on it.
And there is a potential of revenue being generated as a result of, well, I guess, some of what I've been reading. What would that look like to the city that you would anticipate?
That is a separate process. So the city has two hats, right? Pardon me. They can regulate, and then they can also dispose of their own property. And because you own street lights, traffic signals, things like that, if you do decide to license them out for space, these types of attachments, there's the possibility for some revenue. That doesn't happen through this ordinance. This ordinance concerns things that go on other poles, joint poles, new poles, things like that.
And the other concern, obviously, we've seen safety and that kind of thing in terms of what we've had some concerns about. How do we make sure, if they're going to be doing everything within that little short window of time that they have to decide, what happens if there's a box out there and it becomes blocking the view for a safety concern? How are we going to make sure that that's addressed, that we don't have a safety concern with an installation that could potentially block some of the visibility?
So even in situations where a snafu happens and a project becomes automatically deemed approved by law, we have standardized conditions that the ordinance requires become attached to those projects. And one of those conditions is you must comply with all health and safety codes. And if you do not, it doesn't matter whether the project was deemed approved by law, you can revoke that approval at the city level.
Now, considering this is the technology upgrade from having a huge monopole somewhere, what kind of radius or range would we be seeing if there's one of these placed on an electrical lamppost? In terms of how can we imagine how many of these we might be seeing in the city?
Very good question. I don't have a great answer for you. I can give you generalities. Everybody uses different technologies, and the frequencies that are being used affect how far they propagate, and then whether things like buildings, trees, and other types of obstructions attenuate the signal. A good thumbnail sketch is that each one of these facilities will cover an area that's approximately 500 feet in diameter to maybe 1,500 feet in diameter. But they are not intended to be total replacements for large facilities like you see on rooftops. They're supplements. So they're not going to blanket the area. In the near term, they're going to be addressing trouble spots, heavy intersections, transit centers, places where people just gather, and there's a lot of network congestion.
I guess there was, we talked about revenue, we talked about the visibility, the poles that we would be using, and again, you don't have any idea of how many of them we're going to be getting on here. And there was also something about underground. Could you talk to us a little bit about the standard that we have with this being underground versus all of the other utilities being underground? I think you probably responded to several of my questions, but maybe the public would have a little bit more question about those items.
Sure. So undergrounding of existing utilities, including electrical and telephone utilities, are all governed under PUC tariff rules. But for new installations, like ones that would be governed under this ordinance, we have a provision in our policy that says if the existing utilities are primarily located underground, the portions of the equipment that can be located underground must be underground. So that includes everything except generally the antenna needs to be above ground to work, and any electrical meter boxes, those have to be above ground so that people can see the meter. In other instances, the state law is a little unclear, but we do have the ability to require compliance with aesthetic regulations, which would include undergrounding, if the proposed facility would incommode the public's use of the right-of-way. So what we've tried to do in the ordinance is put a little bit more meat on the bones and say that you have to be able to demonstrate that there would be an unreasonable interference with some very specific visual resource. Not just that it's ugly, but that it's going to harm the view of a slough, the river, the park, the coastline, or some other type of very important protected legitimate government interest.
Now, in light of all of the fires that we've had, and they're coming through, we're getting some of the electrical lines that are going back and forth and arcing and having fires and whatnot. What do we have in terms of a concern for safety that these would be installed on poles? And because we have the transformers, they go off. How are we going to make sure that this is also public safety, that we don't have anything sparking, igniting, and creating fires that we've been seeing on some of the utility poles?
There's a couple of things that we've got at play on safety front. First one is that while we have a relatively short amount of time to make decisions about up or down, whether we want to approve this or not, those timeframes don't govern the process of making sure that it's safe, right? It's just the concept of this is an acceptable location, this is an acceptable design. It can be built so long as public health and safety officials say that it meets code standards. So we're not rushed on that front. Second, there are rules that say that certain modifications are just by right, and that we have the ability to basically rubber stamp them. But those rules don't preempt public health and safety, and they don't preempt situations where a pole would have to be replaced in order to structurally support all the equipment. So in those instances, we get a lot more of our discretion back because there's a lot more that goes into that type of decision-making process. Lastly, we have the standard conditions of approval. No matter what, however the project is approved, it will always be subject to these. And if there's any type of non-compliance, it's basis for revoking the permit altogether and pulling the equipment down.
And I guess one last question there is, considering how long it takes for us to get PG&E on some activity that we need in this area, do they have to go through a PG&E process as well? Because if they're using one of their utility poles, if it takes us like 6 to 8 months or even longer to even get PG&E to respond to what we need here, are these vendors going to have an issue along that line, or we anticipate that, or be involved in the process to help facilitate that based on the turn times we're supposed to do on allowing these or permitting these?
So one of the things we do to help ourselves there is we make sure that they don't come in with an application to get a permit until they've already gotten the approval of the pole owner. In many cases, the applicant will be a member of a joint pole committee, so they will have some interest in that pole already, so that's not necessarily always going to be a problem. But we weren't going to get hamstrung by that process. We're going to make it come to us having already done it first.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you. Any other questions from the council at this time? Questions on this agenda item, telecommunications?
Yes. I was wondering, when they do the polls, I've seen the different kinds of polls that they want to do, but is there at least any kind of landscape design review process that here at planning will look at to make sure it matches the neighborhood or the existing polls that are there?
So there is a provision in the proposed policy that would allow the Director of Public Works to require landscaping if it would be appropriate in a specific context.
But in terms of the poles, though, matching sort of the rest of the poles that are there.
Oh, you mean making sure that the poles are the same?
Yeah.
So, yeah, if there is a replacement pole, then that pole would have to match the existing, we'd want to be in the same line, relatively similar spacing, that kind of thing.
Further questions? Councilmember Bilzich.
I'm sure you're aware of the email or mail that we got this afternoon, and they have asked us to delay this. Have we addressed all of their concerns?
We are comfortable with all of the concerns that they raised, yes.
Have you had a conversation with them?
Yes, we have had conversations with Verizon's outside counsel on these issues.
And we've satisfied their concerns?
No, I think they would prefer that you not take action on this. But we are satisfied internally that their concerns are not necessarily in the city's best interest in every instance, or are not well founded in the law.
And Mayor, Council, I believe this is the letter also that appeared before the Planning Commission.
That's correct.
As well.
And if it does make you feel a little bit better, we work with this particular law firm all over the state. And in many instances, they've had suggestions that were productive and helpful that have been incorporated into this type of a draft. So that's one of the reasons why our draft is very long and their letter is relatively short, covering big, broad-stroked issues that they would prefer to see changed.
So if this is passed tonight, do you feel comfortable that you'll be able to address their concerns?
I'm comfortable that this ordinance will not be an impediment, unreasonable impediment to their deployment. In many instances, this ordinance is helpful because it's administrative. Other jurisdictions have taken a different tact, requiring full-blown CUPs for every instance of an installation, which has not always had great results for either side. A lot of delays and unnecessary costs. While they may not love everything that's in this ordinance, I think that it is a very fair, even-handed, and well-put-together document.
Workable?
Workable, certainly.
We heard from this agency. What about the other carriers? Have we heard from anything from them?
We have not. And this was not just put out for comment to Verizon. We've put it to all the usual suspects in this industry, including the trade association, California Wireless Association.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There'll be a chance for some more council discussion after we open this up to the public. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the public at this time on this agenda item, telecommunication uses, please do so at this time. Seeing no one from the public wishing to address us at this item, we'll return this to the council. But let me say, you know, I'm sorry that, Mr. Mason, you weren't here at other hearings that we held where we had the room filled with angry people about cell tower placements, many of them private, and we don't have to go very far to observe a cell phone tower, which is really a barrel on a pole down on Grove Street, and you can see it right off of our parking lot deck here, which is kind of a visual impediment, I would say, to looking at the valley. But then again, it'd be nice to stay out of court, and it'd be nice to not expend all our time, resources, heavy funding, chasing cell tower myths as well as truths. I'm sorry that Ms. Garrett's not here this evening, Marilyn Garrett.
Right.
She often comes and speaks to us regarding the dangers of cell towers, and I certainly hope that this won't put more drivers on their phones either, but we'll see. Okay, seeing then no public comment, let's return this to the council for deliberation, further discussion, comments, questions, whatever you have. Councilmember Garcia.
I want to move approval for the amendments to Title 14.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Garcia, second by Kaufman Gomez to approve our ordinance first readings and the resolution. This is items 6, 7, and 8 in our agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Bilicich.
So if we pass this tonight, we're not going to end up in court over some of this stuff?
No. One of the nice features of this approach is that you're passing rules and a policy form by resolution. So if there's a serious dispute that would arise, and I am very confident that if any of the dispute was to arise, it would not be serious, you could change the rules at the next meeting if you were so inclined.
And then as far as landscaping and enhancements, these are going to be more blending in with the environment?
Right, landscaping, other types of visual changes, aesthetic concealment changes are supposed to be intended to blend, right? Not make these things stand out, and evaluate on a case-by-case basis. So if it's not needed, it won't be required. If it is, it'll be tailored to that situation.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's good that we have some flexibility on this to change it in the future if we need to, but I don't want to see a fickle council, a council that flops back and forth and confuses the public or confuses the telecommunication industry either. We've spent a lot of time, money, and effort in kind of being drug under the bus by telecommunication providers when it's pretty clear that federal law and state law preempts local law on this subject. So if there's any member of the public out there that's sore about this, they should talk to their federal and their state representatives and get those guys off the community's back.
Mayor, may I have one more comment? So there's a sign that's posted on a pole, and you're 10 days before they're going to do installation. And a neighbor comes to the city council or comes to the city and say, we see that notice, we don't want it there. Are you going to hand them over what our ordinance is, or how do we make sure that the response is there with somebody that last minute asks about this?
So the response should be directed towards the Public Works Director in the first instance. If it is,
Lucky you.
If it is directed towards City Council, you can obviously have the Public Works Director address the issues that are raised, but it would have to happen within that certain time period, because while the Public Works Director can't act until 10 days after notice is published, there is a maximum time limit for action set by federal law, and in many cases could be as short as 60 days. So,
thank you.
Timing will be an issue.
Well, again, I don't think this will put all the objections to bed about telecommunication siting and what goes on a pole and what doesn't go on a pole, but at least it's a good start. And again, the public just needs to recognize that the federal regulations and the state regulations preempt us, and that our hands are virtually tied on it, and this will help us to hopefully not go down the wrong rabbit hole regarding placement of these devices, at least on public property. Thank you. I think we're ready for roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Bilicic?
Yes, because we can change things.
Kaufman Gomez?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Hurst?
Yes, and so approved. Thank you very much. I don't think this will be the last word on telecommunications, but hopefully close to it. Let's move on in our agenda to any requests for scheduling future agenda items. Councilmember Garcia. I'm having a little trouble here tonight, you noticed.
I can tell. It is Garcia.
Through cell phone communications.
Earlier this evening, I spoke about the summer youth program that is going to be a partnership between PVUSD and the city. I'd like to request a resolution be brought to the council to formalize this partnership between the city and PVUSD. So that's my first request. The second is in January, I had asked that an ordinance to prohibit sales of flavored tobacco be brought to the council, and I'd like to know when that's going to happen.
Mayor, Councilmember Garcia, I think we've been talking about it. I do not have the exact time, but I will let you know. We'll figure it out, and we'll get back to you on that.
Just as long as we know it's going to come.
Yeah, we haven't forgot about it.
Okay.
Councilmember Bilicic.
Well, you know what I'm going to say. I say it every time. And this is going to be the third paramedics, fire station, whatever we want to call it. When are we going to agendize it?
A place to park the ambulance.
That's it.
Mayor, Council, I think that as part of out of the upcoming budget decisions and the review and the long-term capital projects, I believe that item will be coming up for discussion.
Which is in May?
Good.
Yes.
Good time for budget discussions.
Can I-
Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
There you go. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
CalPERS, when are we going to see the discussion about that on our agenda?
That will all be part of those budget conversations with the council. We plan on bringing a long-term financial forecast as well as the capital plan in May in advance of the council's review of the budget in June. And that'll be an opportunity to have more discussions around CalPERS.
And the strategic plan that we discussed, and where we are on the calendar for that?
That is also coming at the same time. We have extended the outreach period because we've had additional interest from our nonprofit partners of wanting to hold an additional outreach meeting, which we are working with them on now. And we plan on bringing the strategic plan along with the budget as part of your approvals.
Thank you.
You can see it's going to be a busy May and June. Other requests for future scheduling and agenda items? Seeing none, we'll go on to item number 11, any emergency items added to our agenda this evening. And seeing no emergencies, we'll adjourn the meeting.